Hello, everybody, and welcome to this existing features track. My name is Jordi, and I'm responsible for partner enablement here at Akeneo. Today, I'm joined by two Akeneo legends, Estefania and Virginie, who will show you how to speed up your product readiness through intelligent automation. Before handing it over to Virginie, I have two quick housekeeping announcements. First, for any questions, please use the Q&A chat. Our technical product moderators are on standby to help, and we'll answer some of them at the end of the session. Second, there are downloadable assets available with additional information on today's topic. Now, with that being said, please help me welcome Virginie and Estefania.
Hi everyone, welcome to this session. It's kind of a workshop session. It's a really privileged moment between you and us. So really feel free to ask all of your questions all along the way. We have prepared some great demos for you. And this is what it is about. So let's start with something simple. Most teams today don't struggle to identify issues to their product data. They have dashboards, you have dashboards, you have completeness scores, feedback from channels. The real challenge is something else. It's getting the work done consistently and at scale. Fixing data manually, coordinating teams, ensuring quality, keeping everything moving, that's where things often break. So the real question is not what's wrong with data, with my data model. It's more, how do you make your product data workflows run automatically? And that's exactly what we'll explore today. How to turn manual processes into automated workflows. So your teams don't have to do everything manually. That's really the purpose. And this is something we've seen again and again with Estefania. I'm Virginie Blo, I'm Product Marketing Manager at Akeneo, and I'm joined by Estefania. She will introduce herself in a moment. And we both started as consultants, business consultants at Akeneo. We have worked with a lot of partners, with a lot of customers, and which means we've seen hundreds of product data projects. And if there is one thing we've learned is that the biggest challenge is not the modeling of the data. It's really making sure the work gets done consistently at scale. And whether you're joining live or watching the replay, this session is really about giving you practical patterns you can apply right away. So to illustrate that, how we can leverage some Akeneo key capabilities, I'm glad to be joined by Estefania, one of our solution engineers in the US. Hi, Este.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see that there's quite a few attendees. As Virginie said, I'm Estefania Perez. I've been with Akeneo almost 5 years, or actually 5 years a few weeks back. And prior to being a solutions engineer, I was a business consultant for 4. So it's not only about seeing a lot of the issues that our customers have, but it's also about hearing some of the pain points that you've shared with us throughout this time. And hopefully today we will help you kind of target some of those pain points, which is automating that product enrichment and also automating to make sure that your products are being or that we are getting your products ready at scale. So back to you, Virginie.
Yes, absolutely. So again, today it's not about discovering new features, but it's really about seeing how to use what you already have access to in Akeneo PIM in a smarter, more scalable way. So by the end of the session, you will see how to turn manual enrichment into automated workflows, combine rules and workflows to enforce quality at scale, integrate AI, because yes, we'll talk about AI a bit, directly into your processes, and most importantly, take away patterns that you can reuse. So before we jump in, and I promise we have only 4, but we love to hear from you. So we have that first poll question. You may see the poll question appear right now. So if you can take 30 seconds to just answer to that. How automated are your product data workflows today? How would you say it is? So give you a moment to answer to that. You just have to click. Yeah, I see the votes are coming. So we give you the time to click on that. Thank you for answering. I'll give you some Yeah, that's great. I can see a trend. I will share the result with you in a moment. Thank you for voting. Thank you for sharing. That's great. Again, we will have 4 poll questions in total, but that's super important also for us to know where you are on your automation journey in Akinio. So I'm sharing the result with you right now. So some of you get some automation, you would say basic rules, basic workflows. So absolutely you're joining the right session for that. So you will learn hopefully a lot after this session. Thanks for sharing. So again, today we really want to show you how to create some processes. There's still a lot of manual work. So we know that we can always make that evolve because today fixes are still manual, governance is inconsistent, and processes don't scale. So it's not just about features, but how to combine them into patterns that you can reuse. And before we jump into the first scenario, we have the second poll question for you today. What would you say is your biggest bottlenecks today? What is the hardest part to control, to automate? Is it fixing data, quality issues, coordinating teams, the lack of clear guidance, governance rules? Is it about scaling enrichment across large catalogs, across markets? Is it generating or updating content? What would you say is your main bottleneck? Okay, I can already see a trend. Thanks a lot. Okay, I see a lot of keeping data consistent across channels. Okay, so it's also all about coordination. So I'm sharing the results. Yes, as you can see, the most of it is really keeping data consistent. Thanks a lot. I'm stopping that and we can move. So before we start the first use case, we wanted to share with you what we call our automation framework at Akinio. So we can define that into 4 layers. The first one is react to something that's going wrong, identify that, decide, execute, and enhance. So again, react is really how your system detects changes instantly. Decide how business logic is applied, execute how we can automate actions, and enhance how AI augments everything under, of course, your control, human control. So let's start and let's see with you, Estefania, how do you react to, again, anything that's going wrong with some triggered rules?
Thank you, Virginie. So let's start off. What you're seeing on my screen first is to start off with a simple scenario. So if you can actually switch back to the slideshow so we can kind of lay out the first scenario that we're going to talk about. So what we're talking about in this first scenario is from sustainability data to trusted product claims. So this simple scenario, I want you to imagine that you need to turn sustainability data, for example, into something you can trust and share, which is driven by new regulations like the digital product passport. If some of you have heard about the digital product passport, or if you haven't, this passport is part of a broader shift in e-commerce starting in the EU, where new regulations will require companies to disclose product materials and environmental impact. But this is just one example, right? Across industries, the real challenge is managing complex product data at scale while keeping up with consistent change. And as we saw in the polls, a lot of you mentioned that you are struggling to keep that data consistent across channels. So this kind of ties back to that. And this is where product readiness comes in, turning that data into something that's reliable, usable, and ready to activate. So how do we make product data ready at scale? We're going to put this into practice today. And for this first scenario, I'll show you how we can keep data up to date in real time with the rules engine, and also how we can keep data consistent and governed with the reference entities. Because without accurate and reliable data, companies risk compliance issues, loss of brand trust, and also potentially loss of sales. So if we now switch back to my PIM, I will walk through how I structured this today. So what we're seeing here is what we call a reference entity. If you're not familiar, I think a lot of you are, but I created what I call a sustainability profile. This is where I can make sure that my data is consistent across channels. And again, this is tied back to that first scenario where we're focused on creating ultimately that digital product passport. And if you can see, I have a letter grade that will be tied to all my products within my product catalog. If I go into one of these letter grades, I see that I'm not just covering a letter grade of A, but I have a lot of rich metadata that can be consistent across those products. So I have here a CO2 range that's tied to that letter grade, water usage, an eco score, and also some aligned certifications for each of these grades. What is happening here is that if any of this data changes, it will also make those updates through all of my products that are tied to these reference entities. And again, this is just one example for how I'm leveraging reference entities to keep my data consistent across channels. But think about other examples that we might have for example, the fashion industry. I might have things like brands or also materials. For the food and beverage industry, I might have things like allergens. And for electronics, I might have technical standards such as Energy Star or any other certifications or things of that nature. Now that we've seen how we're keeping that data consistent, we're going to shift to automation with the rules engine. And this is how we have governed data changes. Again, for example, the sustainability grade I just showed you. And we are going to automate those changes. Let's say I need to cover this across a lot of my products. I'm now shifting to that rules engine where I'm focused, and I actually have my tab here with that sustainability grade A. What is happening here is that I'm showing that if any of my products have a grade of letter A, for example, I want to automatically populate the rest of my attributes for CO2 range. And I'm just copying that data from my reference entity that has already been established into specific targets or attributes within a product page. I'm also doing that for the water usage as we see here, and I'm making that water usage attribute within my product page automatically populated if I have that letter gray or if I have that letter B, etc. So another thing is, how do we execute this? How do we set up these rules? What's going to trigger them to run? Within Akinio, we have different execution types, so whatever fits your business. The first one that we see here is scheduled. So a scheduled rule means that we can run this in batches at set times. A triggered rule, which is what we're going to be focusing on today, is that when data changes within my product, for example, going from a letter A to a letter B, that automatically would pre-populate or populate the data such as the CO2 range and that water usage after that letter grade changes. And then we have workflow-based rules where we have specific rules triggered at the end of a step in a workflow or at the beginning of what we call a step in a workflow. And I will be talking about workflows in my next use case. So if it doesn't make sense right now, it will likely be clear during that second use case. Another item that if you didn't catch, is that with the rules engine, we can also populate or govern automate, some of the data that we're seeing within those reference entities that I just showed you. What do I mean? If I want to populate some of the data points or that metadata with the rules engine, I can also automate that through what we call the reference entity rules. So for example, if I want to concatenate some of the data within a reference entity, I can establish that and make sure that that data is also automated. And I'll show you this example in my next use case. So now let's see how this is put into action with the rules engine and the reference entities. What I'm showing you now and the product I'll be focusing on today is this reclaimed oak console table. I have a dedicated group here of sustainability impact. And let's say some of this data is coming in through an API call or I'm doing an import, and the only data I might have is that sustainability profile, right? So I have A. So instead of clicking through all of these and populating all of this other data, or we're prone to make mistakes, or we're prone to maybe have the incorrect ranges here, I already have the governed data in my reference entities. So I want to make sure that that's consistent across channels and so forth. Once I save this data, we will have the remainder of the water usage, for example, CO2 emissions, sustainability grade, be populated. This is just going to take a few seconds. And in the meantime, while this is populated and I refresh the page, let's also talk about that DPP, or that digital product passport. How am I triggering that, and how is that coming into play for this product? So we're going to be focusing on extensions here quickly while this data populates. And extensions, if you're not familiar with them, allow us to connect external systems or custom solutions like that DPP directly into your PIM. They give you the flexibility to adapt to a new requirement while maintaining the stability of a SaaS platform. So you can extend your data model, integrations without impacting your core PIM structure. And this is, again, not just about sustainability. It's about how you scale your product readiness, support compliance, and adapt to new business requirements across all of your data. So also, you may be seeing that with the digital product passport, I have something called product journey. Here we have the sustainability impact, which is going to be carried over and from the attributes that I just populated with the rules engine. And if we see here for the product journey, just to show you where that is coming from, I'm just capturing that also within my product. And again, that's bring over through this extension panel. So now if I go back to the sustainability impact and focus there, when I refresh the page, if everything goes as planned, we will have that data, and it just needs a few more minutes, but we will have that data populated, and then we will have the digital product passport data here set. And if this doesn't load in just a second, we'll just move on to the second use case and come back and show that completed data really quickly. So I will come back and show this in just a few seconds. But what we're seeing also, if you see when we populate any product data with the rules engine, we can see how we're populating that data with rules, and we can always click on this hyperlink to give us a little bit more impact and seeing what is populating these or this product. So we always have that transparency. We always know what the impact is directly within the product, simply by just clicking on that on these rules hyperlinks right here. So again, we always have this when we're demoing or when we're showing something of this, but let's see or summarize what the business outcome is in this scenario. So now we see that with this scenario, by using the reference entities and that automation through the rules engine, we're meeting those compliance requirements through creating that DPP with the extensions. We're reducing that risk and avoiding penalties because we have that governed data through the reference entities that we created for that sustainability profile. And then we can confidently scale our businesses because we're capturing all of this information, making sure that it is, again, consistent, and we're meeting the compliance requirements that are set by a certain industry, right? And again, this isn't just for sustainability. We can apply this to brands, care instructions, color, country of origin, etc., and add that on to the rules engine. So again, before we move forward, I swear this should have populated. Not sure why this is happening today, but we can also move on to our second use case and again, come back to the sustainability profile here. So for the second use case, if we can switch over just quickly here to the next slide to the next scenario. I don't know if we have
Yes, I had a poll question, and we don't have any questions so far, Estée, but you will show us when it has turned, when the rules have applied. So yeah, we wanted to know from you, where would you automate as soon as you can? What would bring the most of value for you today? Would you use the rules or the automation to detect issues automatically, to apply some business rules consistently, to manage workflows and approval, to reduce manual effort? What's your main use case? Okay. We can see some answers coming. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so that's not surprising, Estefania. It's really reducing manual enrichment effort. And the good news is really, as we always used to saying, as soon as you have a business rules that you can say, we can apply, we can reflect that into an automated rules with the rule engine, right? So I'm sharing with you the answer, but it's really no surprise there. So this is really what is it for? So you can move to the next use case, Estefania, and you will come back to the rules application.
Yep, absolutely. So in the next scenario, we're going to be talking again, how do we manage onboarding at scale? Onboarding, by that, I mean onboarding new products. And doesn't even have to be onboarding. We can also capture, for example, changes to our product enrichment. So workflows automate that process. So we're orchestrating people, AI, and rules to accelerate that product readiness while still ensuring that we're only having that human intervention when there are some exceptions required. So when we want to do a double or a check because of certain logic that we placed behind our workflows. So within the workflows, we're going to be showing you how we can assign the right teams automatically, enrich and review and approve by the correct teams. And again, lastly, having that additional review only for the right teams or when we have those exceptions. So for this, if we can switch back now to my demo, and I told you it was populated. Sometimes it just takes a few seconds, depending on how many rules you actually have in your process tracker. And then lastly, just want to show you how this is carried over to that digital product passport. And again, always happens when we're demoing, right? So let's talk about workflows now. Like I said, we're going to have in this example 3 steps to my workflows. So we are doing product data entry, and I will show you how we establish this. So product data entry is going to be only for the marketing team or only for the correct teams that I'm assigning for a specific channel as well, which we're focused on that marketplace. And you can always give guidance to your teams when doing enrichment, right? So we're saying, fill out the core identity of this product to make sure that nothing moves forward without the basics and giving them some specific time frame to do that enrichment. Here, we're also dictating what specific attributes I want them to enrich. So that is my manual enrichment process. The second one, this is where AI takes over. We are telling the system through, as you can see, some connected rules. And here I'll show you which connected rules I have established, where we're defining a brand voice. We're creating a description for our products, given some rules and automation, and also taking which I will show in just a second, some AI configurations, which are tied back to some of those reference entities where I'm telling the system, make sure that my brand voice description covers specific language, it avoids certain language, and also it establishes a given brand voice and also basically just a profile of my brand. And today we're focused on matcha designs, which I will go back in a second and show you what that is. We're also leveraging what we call PX Insights. If you are not familiar with this is focused on agentic commerce. So making sure that we're also ready, not just for e-commerce today, but e-commerce for the future as well, and the way that consumers will be shopping in the future with LLMs. So I have connected those rules for this second step with that AI content generation. And as I mentioned, for that brand voice, I just want to pause and show you what we're doing there. So if I go to the reference entity for Matcha Designs, as we can see when we'll create the description, we will see that we want to be mindful. We want to focus on the why behind the design. We also want to say we have some established preferred terms. So highlight how we're earth first focused or eco-friendly. I also say I don't want certain terms to be used, such as focusing on accessible quality or investable designs, or greenwashing a little bit by saying green/eco-friendly is too generic. So those are some things I want to avoid. And I also have a brand story that I want to capture within my description. So creating a reference or entity for my brand will allow me to really scale by applying this same standard and consistency throughout my products. And the way that I'm using this is, if you haven't guessed already, through automation, through my AI configuration. How does this work? So when I create an AI configuration, I'm telling the system what data to take into account, and brand is actually tied back to that reference entity. So when I tell the system or that AI configuration to leverage this attribute, it's pulling not only from the title of that record, so the brand, which is Matcha Designs, it's pulling all of that metadata as well and taking that into consideration when I am doing my generation through AI configurations in PIM. So we also have a custom prompt where we're giving it a little bit more refinement. So I will provide you with a product and its key features. You will write a marketing description that brings in that product to life. So adhering to those editorial pillars and rules that I've established, not only within that brand reference entity, but also bringing into consideration all of the data that I've established here. And we will see that connected back to my workflows through the connected rules that I have established within the rules engine for that brand. If you give me a second here, for that brand voice description, where I say when the brand voice description or the description is empty in a product, I want you to populate it with the description generation of brand voice, which is that AI configuration. And if you can see here, this is a workflow-based rule that I've showed you previously with the execution types. So now with this workflow, with the connected rules, just one last thing I want to show, this should be triggered at startup. So when I start this step in my workflow, this data should be populated. And the only thing I should be doing is reviewing this data that will be generated. So the last step that I haven't shown you for this workflow before we actually go in and test this out is the sustainability check. What I'm doing here is that I'm establishing another part here where I'm saying, if I want you to review all these certifications that have been previously populated, and some of these are also going back, for example, to my sustainability profile. And one thing that I'm showing here, I have lots of rules here where I say if there's any discrepancies here, if there's anything that is missing or doesn't seem aligned with my business logic, I want you to actually push this back. And these are just going back to some of the rules I've established here, where we have fair trade certification review, for example. And I want you to trigger a Boolean if there's any discrepancies where you say this is fair trade certified. However, it has not been verified and we say, yes, it's fair trade certified. I want you to push this to my legal team for review because I want to avoid compliance risk. I want to avoid that mistrust in my brand. And I want to avoid not being able to sell my products online. So this will then be pushed to that legal review, which would be a separate workflow specifically for that legal team, because we also want to ensure that only the right teams are being pulled into these workflows. So let's jump in and see how this looks like in action. If I go to my dashboard and I am part of a workflow step, I will see those workflow steps that are specific to me. So going into this product enrichment, that first step, I see that, for example, I may be part of the marketing team and I need to ensure that I am populating the products or the attributes that are specific to me. So here the color section is missing. I go in there, I say this is right now. I see that this last attribute has been filled out, and now I can move on to the next step. It might take a few seconds to get this into the next step, which is that AI automation. However, we see that the system likes me right now and it has automatically been pushed. So this is great. Also, notice that this is 6 out of 6. If I actually go to this product, we don't have a description yet. This is the product. Looking at it in this scene, it is not part of the workflow at this point because we're looking at it in the product grid. However, the description is empty. If I go back to my workflow here, and I apologize, I have too many tabs open. Here we go. And let's see where, oh, here we go. So if I go into this workflow, that this product is in now, just pointing this out, we see that now this description has been populated. No, it's not magic. It's just the rules that I connected at the workflow step. And you also notice that it has been taken into consideration, that brand reference entity that I showed you earlier. So we see some wording that I established to use, Earth First philosophy. We also see that we have environment and artisans behind it. So, and it's not using that eco-friendly earth kind of greenwashing terminology, because I set that up within that brand reference entity. Also, if you notice the reclaimed O console table, this is where I told my AI configuration to take the name of the product within the AI configuration as well. So I approve this, and it will go on to the next step, which is that sustainability check. Going back now to my workflows here, or the activity dashboard, we see that I'm at the last step of this workflow. And we see that 10 out of 10 have been populated. So let's just quickly review what's happening here. So now we're saying that this product is carbon neutral, and the sustainability profile is A. That doesn't make a lot of sense, right? This should be carbon neutral. Also, notice that this product doesn't really contain textiles. It doesn't contain organic fibers, and it has not been verified with the Fair Trade or Fair Trade Workshop verified. However, we say it's got certified, which is specific more to fabrics and materials. And we say that the Ecotext certification is also part of this product. Let's say our team misses this, they just approve. We say, great, this product is ready, and it has exited the workflow. It's ready to go. The data has been committed to the system, and now this product has been populated with the data that was done through the workflow enrichment. Now, what we should see now is that because I made those incorrect sustainability checks, we should see that the legal team now jumping into their Aquino or their profile, we should see that this product should be part of the legal review. And again, hoping that the system likes me today, that product should be shown in their workflows. And here we go, always in error when demoing. So I will refresh it and hope for the best.
Yes.
And we should see the product show up. It might just be taking a little bit to push to this workflow, but let's look into another example for just a second. So what we should see is that when it gets to the legal review, we should see that only the quality and compliance group here should be shown. So again, for example, we have some information here, and this one's actually a good one because we see that we are not having textile components and so forth, and this other certifications have not been marked. So this probably, I was playing around with it, and we see how that has been populated. However, what were the key takeaway here is that only the data that needs to be reviewed should be pushed to the correct teams. And again, let's go into a separate one here. I probably made some modifications, but this one is a good example. So we see that we have carbon neutral, similar to the previous product. However, the sustainability profile is B. So this is a missed sustainability profile, which again can cause some legal compliance issues because we're having a claim that it's incorrect. We also see the same thing with the textile component certifications, where we're saying, no, it is not, it does not contain textile components, yet we have that GOT certification or that OECO text certification. So again, only the right teams are making those review, or we're only calling out when someone needs that intervention within a workflow, which contributes back to that automation that we have been talking about, and also making sure that our products are ready at scale without having to manually review every single process. So overall, what we're doing is reducing that effort, minimizing risk, and ensuring that compliance at scale is set up. And I'll check one more time. My product never came in. I know it only happens when I'm demoing, but that is basically, in summary, the two use cases that we've covered today, compiled with AI, compiled with reference entities, and those rules all connected within a workflow.
Maybe what you can show, Estefania, is also the prompt that you dedicated to, spot that potential inconsistency so that the legal team just has to focus on what must be inconsistent. So maybe you should show how you did that too and how you link that to the step in the workflow for the legal team to save their time.
Yep, absolutely. So in the prompt, it's actually a rule that I have established here. So if you can see, I have quite a few to target different certifications that I've established. So here for the legal compliance, this is where we're talking about the carbon neutral certification. So I say for wood specifically, if I say it's carbon neutral and it has that certification and the sustainability profile is A, B, and C, I want this to trigger the legal review because I know that A, B, and C is not carbon neutral. In my reference entity, if you see here, which I've established that, I say net zero or carbon neutral is actually not emitting any carbon. It has no carbon range. And also it's less than 100 liters for that water usage. So that is why I'm saying if it's any of these grades, A, B, or C, I need that review to occur. And I establish that again through the rules engine. Now the execution, as I mentioned, is going to happen through that workflow based.
Absolutely.
So when I go back to my workflow here, let's go to the workflow for that product enrichment. We see that I have that sustainability check. And I just need to go back to settings here. And you see we have 4 connected rules because I'm checking 4 specific certifications or 4 specific certifications that I'm reviewing. So we have that legal compliance review, we have that fair trade certification, fiber certifications, and then another one that I have created here. So
all the business rules that matter, you embedded them into some rules that you directly link to a specific step in your workflow. And you can see that we can link as many rules as we want. This is what is powerful, really. And this is one of the key things we wanted to show you today. Really combine the power of the rules to the workflow step to automate and to help your teams focus really on what matters for your business. So yeah, this is really good example, Estefania. Thanks a lot for that. I don't know if we have some questions. Don't hesitate because as Estefania said, we took that example of sustainability regulation because again, this is what matters for some industries. We also know that it can lead to some penalties if you don't comply with some standards. So we took that examples because to us it's relevant and it's what we have experienced also at customers. But maybe you have some other questions, suggestions, ideas for usage. So really don't hesitate to ask your question. Really the key things with this new way of combining rules and workflow steps for us is really also to insist on the fact that to be able to link a rule to a workflow step, this has to be defined as a triggered workflow rule within the execution tab of the rules. That's super important. Yeah, so we have no questions so far, it seems, Estee.
That's great. Maybe I was super clear.
You were super clear. So again, if we summarize what you just what you've just seen is not just automation of tasks, it's really automation of decisions. We really reflect the decision, everything that can be automated into rules that can be combined with some workflow steps. It allows you to reflect again what matters for your organization, your strategy, your industry within the rules combined to workflows. And the key takeaways really here is that you don't need to redesign everything. That's super important. You can start small with very simple patterns like, okay, each time something changes, it triggers a workflow for us. Each time you enter in a step, it validates or enrich. So really you choose what makes sense for your business. So our goal today was really to be super concrete, to help you anticipate. So maybe we have a last question for you. What is today your biggest barrier? Because you all said that you have really scheduled some basic rules. So what do you miss today? What is your barrier, maybe your biggest barrier to automate your product workflow? And did I launch it doesn't seem to work, the poll, the last one that I want to launch. We don't see it, right, Esther?
Nope.
Okay.
I launched it.
I see it. Yeah.
Mhm.
So if you can take a few minutes, because if you have no question, we would love to know if everything is clear, if it's just a lack of time. Okay, for now, I see a lack of trust in automation. So again, what you can do is just to set up rules and do as Estefania did during the first use case, just try the rules to help you trust the system, and then automate that, scale that. Okay, lack of time to set up, complexity of rules. Okay. So that's what really we are saying. You can start small, create some rules, check if it works the way you want, and then as soon as you can, link that to some step automation, put some human in the loop if you want to review everything. That's super easy to do. And again, maybe it's not on the whole catalog, maybe just on specific products, super important products, super sensitive products. I mean, what matters for your business? Again, that's really what matters.
Yeah, and if I
So,
can, oh, sorry. And when you fear that there's a complexity in rules, the workflows are excellent for that, right? Because we're approving or rejecting based on those rules. So you never have to fully commit. You can always combine them with workflows and gain trust in that way as well.
yeah. So if we have no question, I think we will wrap up. So don't hesitate. You also have a one pager to download that will guide you through all the workflow key elements. You can also access the What's New page. It also talks about the extension that Stefania showed earlier. It talks about rules engine. It talks about workflows. So, and the brand new reference entity rules that you can apply that Estefania also showed today. So don't hesitate to go on the What's New in Akineo on the Help Center. And yeah, thanks for joining today and see you soon.
Well, I thought that was a great way to kick off day 2 of Unlock Digital. Thank you for that fantastic presentation, Estee and Virginie. I love seeing how these features just tie together to boost that product readiness. And for today, we're just getting started. So for our next tracks, we welcome citation and auto quotes in the new features track, and we have print and Polyco Healthline in the existing features track. So just navigate back to the event portal to select your preferred session. And because we did finish a couple of minutes early, just grab a drink, grab a snack, and we'll see you in the next session. Bye-bye.